north and then corrupt her, and she would corrupt the king. And therefore they would gain a foothold in that kingdom and corrupt the king. And therefore, if you can corrupt the daughter who's corrupting the king, then who's ruling in the kingdom of the north? It would be the kingdom of the south. So very often the power behind the throne is the woman. This was true with Ahab and Jezebel. Jezebel, you would say, was married Ahab, the king of Israel at the time, a king in Israel at the time, and she would corrupt the king. And then who was wearing the trousers? It would be Jezebel, the woman. Well, this is often what they would do: marry off their daughters to the king of the south here, marrying off his daughter to the king of the north. For the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement, but she shall not retain the power of the arm. So, right, the king of the south here is trying to get a foothold with the king of the north through the power of her arm. Neither shall he stand, so the king of the south will not stand, nor his arm. He's trying to get a foothold here. He's trying to twist the arm of the king of the north by using his daughter, corrupting her, therefore corrupting him, and therefore his arm would be the arm that rules, the arm of the flesh that rules over the king of the north through his daughter. But she shall be given up. So the king gives her up, sees through this. And they that brought her and he that begat her, the father, the plan fails. The king of the north sees through it. And he that strengthened her in these times, so the strength of her strength, the strength of her arm, the arm of her flesh, and twisting the arm of tickling his ears and wooing him and seducing him into doing her bidding and her will, would be wooing the king of the north and seducing him to doing the will and the bidding of the arm of the flesh of the king of the south. So this is how they would often operate, and it was all very, very, very corrupt. So she's eventually given up. And he that strengthened her in these times, they're all given up. So verse 7, the plan fails. So the plan wasn't peace and an alliance and an agreement all along. It was to get a foothold in the kingdom of the king of the north through the king of the south's daughter, corrupting her, therefore corrupting the king. So she's given up by the king of the north, but out of her roots shall one stand in his estate, which shall come with an army. In other words, this is talking about her family bloodline. And out of the branch of her roots shall one stand in his estate, in the place of the kingdom of the north here, which shall come with an army and shall enter into the king of the south here. Actually, this is one thing you find when you read these prophecies, is you have to really keep up with as to who he is and who he isn't. It's very important throughout this whole prophecy. It talks of he. Now, he could be the king of the north, king of the south. And it takes some very close reading to keep up with as to who he is. Now, if you follow through on when it's talking about he, it would be talking about the king of the south. But be careful, it could be talking about he, the king of the north. So you have to read this very carefully. And I've just made the same mistake, but out of the branch, so we're talking about the king of the south here, but out of the branch of her root she's given up, shall one stand in his estate, so in the former place of the king of the south, someone from her bloodline, her family line, we're talking about dynasties here, which shall come with an army and shall enter into the fortress of the king of the north. So time goes by, I guess the dad dies and the son stands up in his place, becomes the new king. The first plan failed in that the king tried to marry off his daughter to the king of the north, and therefore gain a foothold in that kingdom. That plan fails, they give her up. And so out of the branch of her roots, out of her bloodline and family, one will stand up in his estate in the place of the former king, which shall come with an army and shall enter into the fortress of the king of the north and shall deal against them and shall prevail. Well, the plan A failed, so plan B, one of the sons of the king of the south, starts a war and therefore takes it by force, takes what they actually want by force. So what do they want by force? They want to rob, steal and pillage, as they always did and always largely always do. So and shall enter into the fortress of the king of the north, shall deal against them and shall prevail, so win in this war. Verse 8, and shall also carry away captives into Egypt their gods, with their princes, taking away the brains, and with their precious vessels of silver and of gold, and he shall continue more years than the king of the north. So now the king of the south is, in short, king of the castle, so to speak. You also find in these prophecies that castles come up. One attacks the other, and of course he has to attack his castle, which is often, they have these walls around this castle. They have to cast up a mount or whatever, get through these walls, and eventually take down the arm and of the flesh of the king of the north or the king of the south, take down his castle. And shall also carry away captives into Egypt their gods with their princes and with their precious vessels of silver and of gold, and he shall continue more years than the king of the north. So he's king of the castle, so to speak here. He's continuing more years than the king of the north. Verse 9, so the king of the south shall come into his kingdom and shall return into his own land. So he appears to win this war and he returns into his own land. And you notice here you have his in italics. So like I say, you must keep in mind that it's talking about he being the king of the north or he being king of the south. And you notice here that, so the king of the south, verse 9, shall come into his, now he's got in italics here, kingdom, and shall return into his own land. So his being the king of the south, who's returning into his own land after robbing, stealing, and pillaging, taking away their gods and their riches and their princes into his land. And now he's, in this same sense, you would say, king of the castle, so to speak. He's top dog. But his sons, now here's again, you think, well, his sons, whose sons? His sons being the king of the south, or his sons being the king of the north? Well, again, it takes some very careful reading. But his sons shall be stirred up, and shall assemble a multitude of great forces, and one shall certainly come and overflow and pass through, then shall he return, and be stirred up even to his fortresses. Now he, in this prophecy, is the king of the north who's returning. They don't give up. There's these wars. One dominates the other and seeks to be top dog. But the top dog would have been the king of the south, who steals all of these riches and all of their gods and the gold and the princes, the brains, and he becomes top dog. But the king of the north doesn't give up. And now you have, and his sons, this is very much dynasties. One dynasty declaring war against the other. So these various wars between the king of the north. One dynasty in the north and another dynasty in the south, and always kept within the family. And one son would stand up in the place of the former king, the former father, and he now would be king. So, but his sons shall be stirred up. They'll be looking at the king of the north here. But his sons shall be stirred up, shall assemble a multitude of great forces, and one shall certainly come and overflow and pass through, then shall he return. So the king of the south robs the king of the north and wins in that war. Now the king of the north returns. And he now declares war on the king of the south, and shall be stirred up even to his fortresses. Well, and the king of the south, so isn't going to take this lying down. The king of the south, so verse 11, shall be moved with choler, and shall come forth and fight with him, even with the king of the north. So you have this backwards and forwards, these wars backwards and forwards. One would fight the other, rob and steal and pillage and all this, and would win the war, become king of the castle, over his castle, defeating his castle. It's kind of like an old game we used to play as children, King of the Castle. And if you've ever played that game, one would stand on top of the hill and the other one would try to get up that hill. And you would throw them down as they came up, or they would throw you down. Should they throw you down, they would become king of the castle. So very childish, but very real in the real world. And this now you have, and the king of the south shall be moved with choler. and shall come forth and fight with him, even with the king of the north, and he shall set forth a great multitude. But the multitude shall be given into his hand. So again, you're going to get lost here if you're not careful. Which one is he? You talking he, the king of the north? Are you talking he, the king of the south? And the king of the south, so very careful reading, the king of the south shall be moved with choler. I'm not having that. You're declaring war with me. I'm not going to take this lying down. And the king of the south shall be moved with choler, and shall come forth and fight with him, even with the king of the north, and he shall set forth a great multitude, so he, the king of the north, shall set forth a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given into his hand. So the king of the north's not going to take this lying down. He sets forth a great multitude, but the multitude is given into the hands of the king of the south. You see how it is, this backwards and forwards and these wars. At one point, the king of the north would be winning, and at another point, the king of the south would be winning, and so on it goes. And when he have taken away the multitude, right, and here again, you got the king of the south. I say you have to really care very carefully to keep up with as to who he is. And when he have taken away the multitude, this is king of the south, his heart, he, the king of the south, right, shall be lifted up. And he shall cast down many 10,000s, but he shall not be strengthened by it. So it looks like the king of the south is winning here. But he's not strengthened by it. He's casting down a multitude. He's casting down many 10,000s in this war. But he shall not be strengthened by it. Why not? For the king of the north shall return, and shall set forth a multitude greater than the former. So, in other words, these kings don't give up. One would declare war on another with his great riches and his great multitudes, and then would cast down tens of thousands, and it would appear that he's winning at that point. And the other would declare war back on the other, and would mount up a greater multitude, a greater army than his army, would cast down tens of thousands more. So all of this bloodshed, lust for power, lust for wealth, lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, lust for power. And what you've got here is the angel telling Daniel that Israel is caught up in the middle of this. In other words, God's people is caught up in all of this. And really, in the last days, this is going to be a theme going through things. This is why the angel is saying this is going to be the theme of history. The theme of history that one would set up a great army and a multitude against the other, and would slaughter, rape, steal, pillage, and through all of these wars, these bloodline families battling it out, down through the ages, setting up a great multitude and casting down tens of thousands, all for the love of money, the love of power. This is how it's going to be in the last days. This is the theme going through history, the angel is saying, largely with this battle between the king of the north, king of the south. This is going to continue again into the last days. And so the prophecy goes on. You look at the world today, and you have again the same scenario that's now rearing its ugly head. And what you're having is the re-emergence of the king of the north, king of the south. And you have the politics of the king of the north, king of the south in the last days, that you're going to have communism largely versus capitalism, autocratic governments versus said democratic governments. And the world is going to again be split into two, whereby one would amass a great army against the other. But now the world is a bigger place than it was back then in the Middle East and so on. So all of this is going to expand in the last days. And so this is giving you a kind of a background and setting the stage for the last days. And what the angel is doing here is largely setting the stage for the last days. This is what the Antichrist, the king of the north, is eventually going to step onto the world stage. And it's going to be the same all over again. The world split into two. A form of the king of the north and the king of the south, one amassing a great army against the other in the last days, with the king of the north being the prince of the covenant standing up in the north. And so it goes on in verse 13, for the king of the north shall return, he doesn't give up, and shall set forth a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come after certain years with a great army, and with much riches. So riches and armies and so on to amass these great wars, wasting all of the money that they accumulate, all of the taxes they get from their peoples and so on to amass these great armies and fight these great wars. And in those times, there shall many stand up against the king of the south. So the king of the north isn't given in. And in those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south, also the robbers of thy people. You have robbers in this is the land of Israel here. This is the children of Israel, and also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fail. So you got kind of false prophets here, even in this prophecy. The robbers of thy people, those in the land of Israel who would be also robbing their own people in those days. So it doesn't follow that everything with Israel was always good. You'd also have kings standing up in Israel that would rob their own people, the children of Israel, and they would also see an opportunity and declare war on the king of the south. And in those days there shall many stand up against the king of the south. Also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision. So a false vision, false prophets, but they shall fail. These false visions and false prophets would fail, but they shall fail, they shall fall. And so it goes on. So the king of the north shall come and cast up a mount and take the most fenced cities, and the arms of the south shall not withstand, neither his chosen people, neither shall there be any strength to withstand. The arms of the south muscle up all the might that he is. These guys send in the most elite troops, and he fails. The king of the north wins here. But he that cometh against him shall do according. Now he here is again the king of the north. But he that cometh against him shall do according to his will, his own will. And none shall stand before him, and he shall stand in the glorious land, that's the land of Israel, which by his hand shall be consumed. So you see why the angel is telling Daniel of all of these great wars that would be fought between the king of the north and king of the south, in that Israel in those days was like a football caught up between the two of these, and each trying to have the power grab over the other, and even had to have the power grab over Israel. And even in Israel, you had those that wanted a power grab and would use false prophets and false visions and see an opportunity and attack the king of the south and take back their power from the king of the south, but they shall fall, it says. So false prophets and false kings that rob the people, that oppress the people, and these shall fall, it says. So in verse 16, but he that cometh against him shall do according to his own will, the king of the north winning here. And none shall stand before him, and he shall stand in the glorious land which by his hand shall be consumed. He shall also set his face to enter with strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter. So the king of the north is winning in this war. And he appears to again here seek an alliance with the king of the south. Thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of women. Now this is Cleopatra the first, you read. So the king of the north has got the upper hand over the king of the south. The king of the south is also largely Egypt in these prophecies. The king of the north is largely, we look at Syria and other countries that the Seleucid kingdom in the north had taken over. Many countries are in the north under the Seleucid Empire. And Egypt and even Libya and other under the king of the south, which was the Ptolemaic kingdom in those days. So he, the king of the north, shall set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom. So he's throwing all of his muscle and might at the kingdom of the king of the south. And upright ones with him, thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of women. So he marries of his own daughter to the king of the south and forms some kind of an alliance and agreement here. And again, he's trying to get another way of getting a foothold in the kingdom of the king of the south. So it goes on, and upright ones with him, thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of women. This is Cleopatra the first, corrupting her. But she shall not stand on his side, neither be for him. In other words, she double crosses her own father. Instead of standing with her own father, the king of the north, she double crosses him and stands more with the king of the south. She also having a lust for power and turns on her own father. And instead of the father corrupting her and therefore corrupting the king of the south, she turns on her own father. And so it says, and thus shall he do. And he shall give him, the king of the south, the daughter of women, his own daughter, corrupting her. But she shall not stand on his side, neither be for him. So she double crosses her own father. So 8 verse 18, after this he shall turn his face unto the isles. So the king of the north here, trying to expand his kingdom, turns his face unto unto the isles, and shall take many, but a prince for his own behalf. Now this prince for his own behalf here is Rome coming in. So this great Hellenistic era and age is going to go into decline with this prince here coming in. So what you have here is Rome coming in here. So after this shall he turn his face, the king of the north, after this shall he, the king of the north, in other words, turn his face unto the isles, and shall take many. So he starts winning, he's to the coastlands. But a prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. Now this prince here is Rome. So what you have is Rome now coming in and turns this Seleucid king back to his own land. And so it says, but a prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease without his own reproach. He shall cause it to turn upon him. So basically he puts his tail between his legs and sends him back to his own land. And this is now Rome starting to come in. So you had this Seleucid Empire in the north, the Ptolemaic Empire in the south, Israel caught up in the middle of all of this. This king of the north waxes the stronger of the two. He eventually tries to push his kingdom further out to these isles, to these coastlands. But at the same time, you have Rome coming in. This is largely talking about what they call the Hellenistic period, after Alexander the Great died. And between that time and up until Cleopatra the Seventh died, they actually say that's the Hellenistic period. You have Cleopatra the First in this prophecy here in verse 17. This king of the north giving his daughter to the king of the south. This daughter that he gives to the king of the south would indeed be Cleopatra the First. And then he pushes towards these isles, towards these coastlands, but runs into Rome. Rome sends him back in shame. And after this shall he turn his face unto the isles, and so take away many. But a prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. Without his own reproach he shall cause it to turn upon him. So sends him back in, puts his tail between his legs, and he turns back and runs from Rome, so to speak. Then he shall turn his face, he being the king of the north, so then shall he turn his face toward the fort of his own land. But he shall stumble and fall and not be found, so he just simply declines. So verse 20, then shall stand up in his estate, in the former place of the king of the north, then shall stand up in his estate, in other words, in his place, a raiser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom. But that within few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. So in short, what you're reading there is the decline of the Seleucid Empire in the north without going into every detail. You've got Rome coming in. You've got now the Seleucid Empire in the north, the kingdom of the north going into decline. Why? Because Rome is coming in. It's going into decline. And so the angel is saying the king of the north now, and that kingdom and the great conquest to rule the world, to rule over the kingdom of the south, to push towards the isles and take over there. Rome coming in and pushing all of this back, and the Seleucid Empire, the kingdom of the north, now going into decline. Now, this is where the angel now suddenly leaps way into the future. He's talked about the Hellenistic kingdom that would come in after the kingdom of the kingdom of Greece. How the kingdom of Greece would be the great horn would be broken outside of the great, and the kingdom would be split up amongst his four generals. These various wars would break out, amassing great armies against each other between the king of the north, king of the south, king of the north being the Seleucid Empire, king of the south being the Ptolemaic Empire. Rome now coming in, and the king of the north pushing towards these isles, towards these coastlands, and Rome pushing him back, and he put his tail between his legs and running back to his own country. And now you've got the Seleucid Empire going into decline. So in the place of that king, in other words, verse 20, then shall stand up in his estate, in the place of the former king of the north, a raiser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom, but within few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. So in other words, the kingdom of the king of the north going into decline. And this is where the angel uses this part of this prophecy as a springboard to now leap into the future. In other words, Rome came in, and so you had the end of the Hellenistic era, so to speak. The kingdom of the north, the Seleucids, the main player in this prophecy, going into decline. And so the angel now seeing that the Seleucid Empire is going into decline. You're seeing the end of this Hellenistic era, and you're seeing Rome now coming into power. But the angel doesn't wish to talk about Rome. He wishes to leap over Rome. So when the Hellenistic Empire, the Seleucid Empire in the north, particularly talking about the king of the north, goes into decline, the angel now leaps into the future and starts talking about the future Antichrist. So this kingdom goes into decline, it's destroyed, and in his estate shall stand up then, verse 20, then shall stand up in his estate in the place of the former king of the north, a raiser of taxes, in the glory of the kingdom, but within few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. So in short, the kingdom of the king of the north is going into decline. Rome is coming in, the upcoming in power and strong arm of Rome is coming in. The angel now leaps way into the future and starts talking about this same scenario all over again, breaking out in the last days. And so he starts talking about this false and fake Messiah, this false and fake prince of the covenant. And this is where the angel now identifies this king of the north that stands up in the last days as being the very Antichrist and false fake Messiah, and names him as the Prince of the Covenant. So verse 21, and in his estate, in the place of the former king that went into decline, in fact, the former kingdom, so to speak, the Hellenistic period going into decline, in his estate shall stand up a vile person. This is the Antichrist, to whom they shall not give the honour of the kingdom. So in other words, he's an outsider. He's coming in and he's taking over in the north. And in his estate, in the place of the former king, in the last days, this is, leaping over Rome, now leaping way into the future, in the place of the former king. And in his estate, in the place of the former king. Going back in history in place of the former king, but we're now leaping way into the future. We're leaping over Rome. Rome came in, the Hellenistic period came to an end, the kingdom of the king of the north, the Seleucid Empire came to an end, and Syria being king of the north, Egypt being king of the south. Who took over Syria when Rome came in? Rome. Rome coming in and taking over in Syria, so now the angel leaps into the future. Syria largely being the kingdom of the king of the north amongst all these other countries that are all part of the Seleucid world empire, so not just Syria. The Seleucid Empire dwindles and you have left just Syria. Eventually, Rome would come in and even take over Syria. So the kingdom of the north declines, and the angel then leaps way into the future and starts talking about the very Antichrist. And so in his place, in the place of the former king of the north, the don't forget, the empire has gone into decline. It will come back, so to speak, in the last days when the king of the north stands up. So leaping over Rome, and now the angel leaps way to the future. And in his estate, in other words, in the place of the former king, and in his estate shall stand up a vile person, this is the Antichrist, to whom they shall not give the honour of the kingdom. So you picture here, he's a kind of an outsider. They don't give him the honour of the kingdom. He appears to sneak in. He's a very crafty, wormy man, so to speak, that worms his way in to the seat of power. And in his estate shall stand up, in the place of the former king shall stand up a vile person, to whom they shall not give the honour of the kingdom. So he comes in dishonourably. He's not necessarily one of the bloodline. He's not necessarily in line for the throne. But he manages to snuck in and sneak his way in. How does he do this? He uses peace. And in his estate, in the place of the former king, shall stand up a vile person, to whom they shall not give the honour of the kingdom. So he's a dishonourable man. He takes the kingdom dishonourably. But he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flattery. He presents himself as a man of peace, who's coming in to keep the peace, to help to bring peace to the kingdom of the north. And so he sneaks his way in and uses peace to worm his way into the kingdom there. He's a vile person. He's full of deceit. He's full of cunning ways. And in his place, in his estate, the place of the former shall stand up a vile person, to whom they shall not give the honour of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. And with the arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him. So he sneaks his way in, he worms his way into government. He uses peace and flattery, he flatters people. He's not in line for the throne. He's a dishonourable person. They don't give him the honour of the kingdom. But he manages to snuck in and sneak in and take over. Much like these women would snuck in and sneak in and take over, that the king of the south would marry off his daughter to the king of the north and thereby gain power in that government. Well, this one comes in with peace proposals, and therefore he's sneaking and snucking in, and he's flattering the flattery and takes over this way. And in his estate shall stand up a vile person who shall not give the honour of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. And with the arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him and shall be broken. He also uses war here. He eventually uses war. He comes in with peace. He comes in with flattery. And he eventually uses war. Now the angel makes the great announcement. Yea, who is this man? Who is this man that's using peace, that's sneaking in, that's also coming in with all of this power and weaponry on his side with the arms of a flood? With the arms of a flood, he's obviously got great weapons. He's also obviously got great power. And so with the arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him and shall be broken. He breaks them, he flatters them, he woos them with peace, and he shows them his military muscle and might, and therefore he sneaks in to the kingdom of the king of the north. He's not in line for the throne, but he's kind of an imposter and an outsider, a vile person that's seeking to get a foothold in the kingdom of the king of the north. And therefore he uses his power, his military muscle and might, and with the arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him. And now the angel makes the great announcement. Who is this man? Who is this imposter? Who is this person that's sneaking in? Who is this great flatterer? Who is this person with all of this weaponry and arms of a flood on his side, whereby they're all broken? With the arms of a flood shall be overflown before him and shall be broken. Yea, he's now saying, yea, now all of that to get to this, all that to say this, yea, who is this man? Who is this imposter? Who is this vile person that's not in line for the throne? Who is this that's sneaking in? Who is this that comes in with the arms of a flood? And shall they be overflowing from before him, shall be broken? This is him. This is the one I've been talking about all along. This is the Prince of the Covenant, the false and fake Messiah. Yea, also the Prince of the Covenant. This is him. This is the king that's going to stand up in the last days. This is the one that's going to worm his way into the seat of power in the kingdom of the king of the north. This is the one that's going to come in with peace proposals. This is the one that's going to come in with all of this great armed with his arms of a flood, with his great weapons of war, and worm his way in and snuck in and sneak in. A dishonourable person to whom is not given the honour of the kingdom, he sneaks in and takes over with his big bag of tricks, big arms of a flood, peace and flattery. Yea, also the angel is saying, this is him. This is the Prince of the Covenant. Yea, also he's, in other words, yea, also the Prince of the Covenant. And after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully. So they formed an alliance, an agreement with him. And now he's got the power and strength of arm here, and he starts working deceitfully. He's wormed his way in. He's got himself into the seat of power. He's taking over in the kingdom of the king of the north. He's showing his great muscle and might and the arms of a flood that he has, these great weapons of war. And he presents himself as a peacekeeper, and he's actually the very Prince of the Covenant. This is what the angel is saying. This is him. Yea, also, verse 21, and in verse 22, with the arms of a flood shall be overflowed, before him shall be broken. Yea, also, the Prince of the Covenant. This is him. This is the Prince of the Covenant. This is the false and fake Messiah. So, praise Jesus.